It was a stormy and dark night. Thomas was driving his car on a deserted road in the countryside. He was trying to get back home after a long day's work in the city. He was tired and unsettled after a tough day. He wished he was with his wife and young son, who were waiting for him at home. Suddenly, his car stopped without any clear reason. He heard a disturbing noise coming from the engine. Thomas tried to restart the engine, but he failed. He looked at the fuel gauge and saw that it was empty. He couldn't understand how that happened, as he had filled the fuel tank before leaving the city. He felt worried and scared. He was in the middle of nowhere, with no car or building in sight. He looked at his phone, but he couldn't find any signal. His phone was his only means of contacting the outside world. He tried searching for a network, but found nothing. He felt despair and isolation. He was stranded here, and no one knew his whereabouts. He wondered what his wife and son would do if he didn't return home. He wondered what would happen to him if he stayed here all night. Thomas decided to get out of the car and search for help. Perhaps there was a nearby house or farm. Perhaps there was someone who could help him. He took his phone, keys, and flashlight. He got out of the car, closing the door behind him. He felt the cold and moisture. The wind was blowing strongly, and the sky was filled with dark clouds. The lightning illuminated the darkness. The thunder shook the ground. The rain was pouring heavily, soaking his clothes and hair. Thomas began walking along the roadside, holding his flashlight. He hoped to find a sign or signal that would guide him in the right direction. But all he saw were trees, fields, and hills. There was no light or movement on the horizon. He felt lonely and scared. He felt like he was in another world, far away from everything. Thomas walked for half an hour without finding anything. He felt tired, hungry, and thirsty. He was considering returning to his car and waiting until morning. Thomas walked for half an hour without finding anything. He felt tired, hungry, and thirsty. He was considering returning to his car and waiting until morning. Perhaps someone will pass by on the road and help him. But at that moment, he saw something in the distance. Something large and dark, protruding among the trees. Something resembling a house. Thomas felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps there was someone who could help him. He decided to approach it, hoping to find someone there. He increased his pace, ignoring the fatigue and the cold. But as he neared the house, he felt something else. Something inexplicable. Something terrifying. The house was old and abandoned. Its windows were broken, and its doors were cracked. Its walls were peeling, and its roof was punctured. Its yard was overrun with weeds and debris. There was something wrong with this house. Something frightening and repulsive. Something evil. So Thomas stopped in front of the front door. He hesitated to enter. He felt like he shouldn't be here. He felt like this house wasn't for him. He felt like there was something waiting for him inside. Something he didn't want to see. But he didn't have any other choice. He needed help. He needed to contact his wife and son. He needed to get out of here. Thomas gently pushed the door, hearing the wood creak. He entered the house, calling out, "Is anyone here?" He heard no response. He felt a creeping sense of dread. The house was dark and dilapidated. He saw traces of blood on the floor and walls. He also saw upside-down pictures of a happy family. Thomas wondered what had happened here. Who were these people? And where are they now? Thomas continued walking, searching for a landline or a mobile phone, or anything else he could use. But instead, he found something even more horrifying. In the living room, he saw the decapitated body of a woman lying on the couch. Her eyes were open, as if staring at him. On the table, he saw her head with a wicked smile on its face. Beside it, he saw a dead man with a knife plunged into his chest. In his hand, he held a note that read, "I'm sorry. I did it for you." Thomas screamed in terror. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. He tried to escape the house, but found the door locked. He attempted to break it down, but failed. He felt like someone was watching him. He looked around and saw a small child standing in the corner. The child was wearing blood-stained clothes and holding a torn doll. With empty eyes, he whispered, "Welcome to hell." Thomas felt terror coursing through him. He didn't know who this child was or what he wanted from him. He tried to speak to him, saying, "Who are you? What do you want from me?" But the child didn't respond. Instead, he began to laugh in a chilling voice. Then he threw the doll on the ground and took out a knife from his pocket. He started to approach Thomas slowly. "Thomas? Thomas? Where are you?" He heard her voice coming from his phone. He looked at his phone and saw that it was ringing. His wife was calling him. She was worried about him. "She's waiting for me," Thomas thought. He felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps there was a chance for survival. Maybe he could call her, ask for help. Maybe he could get out of here. Thomas tried to reach for his phone, but it was far from him. He was on the ground, next to the couch. He had to maneuver past the two bodies and the child to reach it. He had to risk his life. But he was ready for it. Oh, he was ready to do anything to get back to his family. He was ready to fight. Thomas leaped onto the couch, attempting to bypass the child. However, the child was faster than him. He stabbed him in the leg with the knife, causing Thomas to fall to the ground. Thomas screamed in pain. He felt the blood flowing from his wound. He felt weak and dizzy. He couldn't move. The child was on top of him, raising the knife again. He was about to stab him in the heart. "Thomas! Thomas! What's happening? Answer me!" He heard his wife's voice screaming from his phone. His phone was just inches away from his hand. He had to reach for it, to take it. He had to speak to her. He had to tell her he loved her. He had to say goodbye. Thomas reached out his hand with difficulty, grasping the phone. He brought it up to his ear and said weakly, "My love, I'm sorry. I'm in danger. I'm in an abandoned house. On a road. I don't know where. There's a child. Trying to kill me. I'm injured. I'm scared. He couldn't finish the sentence. He felt something sharp pierce his chest. He felt intense pain. He felt life slipping away from him. He looked at the child and saw its sinister smile. He looked at the knife and saw his blood. He looked at the phone and saw his wife's name. He looked at the sky and saw the lightning. Then he saw nothing. "Thomas! Thomas! What happened? Are you okay? Thomas! Thomas! Answer me! Answer me!" He heard his wife's voice crying from the phone. He couldn't answer her. He was dead. This is how this story ends. But is our ending the beginning of something else?